Oh, right. Well, that did something different than I expected. Oh, you saw nothing. Hi, everybody. And I'm hearing myself, even though I said I was going to fix that. So let me fix all the technical glitches that are to be expected. And I think we're good to go. Hi. Welcome, everybody. I can now see comments. It's working. Cool. Welcome to our animation panel and live feedback session and general good vibes chat. We're going to talk about animation. We're going to jump right into it. I'm going to bring on our wonderful guests right now. There we are.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, everybody.
And I'm going to get out of the way and let each of these wonderful animators introduce themselves, starting with Lana.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Lana Bachynski. I'm an associate art director currently at Riot Games, working in research and development. This, 2024 makes it my 12th year in video game animation. I went to the Academy of Art University in San Francisco, where I majored in animation with the comments. Hi, Mitch Stuckey in the chat. Amazing. I majored in animation with a focus in creature animation because I really wanted to animate monsters. And that was something that I thought would take me into film, working at Tippett or ILM, but ultimately took me to my one true love, which is video games. I got an internship at Blizzard Entertainment back in 2012, which was everything I wanted to do since I was like 9 years old. I was working on StarCraft 2, Heart of the Swarm, and I got to do all of the flailing animations in the game. So when the Phoenix Protoss unit picked up a unit and they flailed about in the air, no big deal. I did every single one of those. After my internship at Blizzard, I went back to school where I finished up and then I graduated and I said, all right, Blizzard, you can hire me back, baby. And they said, no, we can't. There needs to be like an opening at the company for us to be able to do that. So I went off for a little while and I did some weird illustration work for an internal marketing company. That was a really great time, but not what I wanted to do. And thankfully, Blizzard eventually had an opening and they called me up and they said, do you want to move back to Orange County? And I said, no, but I do want to work there. So I moved back to Orange County. I worked at Blizzard for 5, almost 6 years until 2019 when I moved over to Riot Games working on League of Legends. I made legendary content for the Skins team, things like Spirit Blossom Ari, Star Guardian, not Star Guardian. I didn't do any Star Guardian. KDA, Seraphine, and Dark Cosmic Lex, and among a bunch of other things. I moved over into R&D about 10 months after that, where I've been ever since. So that's me in a nutshell, baby.
Woo! Awesome. A wonderful recap. Thank you for that. Robyne, you're up.
Mine's not going to be quite as, I can't even remember what year I was in places. But so my name is Robyne. I work as a feature film animator. So I was born and raised in Canada. So I started my 2D animation career there, worked in 2D for about 7 years, then came down into the States, learned Maya, and started working at Blue Sky some year, something. So was there for 5 years, worked on things like Horton Hears a Who, the Ice Age movies, Rio, stuff like that. And then moved over to PDI DreamWorks and was there for 5 years. And then when they closed down, they moved me down to Glendale. So I'd been down there for another 9 years. So just finished up recently on the Wild Robot. So yeah, done a whole bunch of different, styles and whatnot, and just absolutely had a blast. But now I am trying my best to learn Unreal because that seems to be quite the up and coming thing. So Sir Wade has been my anchor. So that's pretty much it.
Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for joining us for this chat. Just as a heads up, feel free to ask questions throughout. We've got the chat open. We can see your questions. I'll field them as they come for the most part. We'll do like a dedicated Q&A towards the end. But if you have any burning questions, feel free.
I have one right away. We're in Canada.
Okay.
I'm also Canadian.
Yes. Coconuts.
Where in Canada from each of you?
I'm from Edmonton, Alberta.
Oh, okay. Whoa. I'm from Calgary.
I was born in Calgary.
Were you?
Yeah, we don't have to be rivals. It doesn't have to be like that.
Yeah, exactly. Doesn't, yeah, there's love. It's Alberta. But I mean, I grew up, born and raised in Calgary, and then spent the last 10 years before I left Canada in Vancouver. So
Yeah, beautiful.
Vancouver's cool. That's the one place in Canada I've visited. It's very, very cool.
awesome.
It's the best.
I wonder how many people here work in Canada, actually. But to our questions, something that I think a lot of people will probably be curious about. Right off the bat, we'll start with some easy ones. Do either of you have any standout moments or favorite projects? Just, you've had these, I don't want to say long careers because they'll keep going, but you've had cool careers and you've worked on a lot of different things, each of you. Any standout moments or big things you're really memorable?
Robyne, why don't you take this one first?
Oh, I get that question from students where they ask, what was your favorite movie to work on? And I don't have a favorite, and I don't mean that in a fluffy kind of, pansy ass way of trying to get out of the question. It's more that there's like every production, there are good things about it. Sometimes some movies, it's the team that really made it, and maybe the film wasn't that exciting or whatnot, but other times the film was really exciting, and the crowd reaction, audience reaction and stuff was just, it made it so cool to work on something like that. But, maybe the production was a little bit more challenging. So there's always something to each one, or there's funny little stories behind the scenes. So it's never actually one particular movie, I could say. So yeah, I know that sounds like such a cop out, but it's true. So
I totally get it. Especially for me, where it's like, my project history is really short. I've worked on League, and I've worked on Heroes, and I've worked on StarCraft, which was the same team as Heroes. So it's like, what's my favorite? Like, well, I guess pick one of the three. But there are such standout individual moments that really sort of make something. I suppose if I were to boil it down to like a single project, well, all things considered, the team I'm on right now, very exciting, very good. I'm going to say that right up top. Great time. I love my current role. My current job is a wonderful experience. But looking back through like the history, something I felt was very formative for myself, not just as an animator, but as a game developer and a creator and a leader, was working on Orphea for Heroes of the Storm, where she was the Heroes of the Storm's first original IP character, and getting to work with a very senior team of different artists and designers and engineers to work on something that was like pretty, it wasn't like high profile, because in like the scope of the company, it wasn't high profile, but like for our team was very intense and had lots of feedback coming in, and really passionately wanting to execute as hard as I could, as best as I could on the animation, but also getting to practice those skills, bringing people together through tension, working through tension, and keeping people calm and excited about something, even though the course of development can be a really long time on something. It really felt like the opportunity to sort of like fire on all cylinders. And then at the end of the day, Blizzard has this fantastic convention called BlizzCon, where I got the sort of catharsis and excitement of being able to stand on stage in front of, however many thousands of people and really present this hero to the world. It just felt like a really full circle, beautiful, got to do every piece of the puzzle that I love doing in game development, and seeing this thing from nothing to something that came out into the world, and it was beautiful and fun and cool and unique. So that was a really standout moment for me.
That's awesome. Was jumping on a stage and presenting that to thousands of people something that you had planned on? Like I guess, is stage fright an issue for you? Is that just like no sweat, or was that kind of thrust on you?
I wouldn't say there's no sweat, but like my overall comfortability with it is probably higher than most. I grew up doing a lot of theater stuff, but not like and nothing against theater kids, but not in like a very like thespian way. I wasn't very good at it. Like growing up, I was so nervous about it. I would say I was a terrible actor, which is why I like animation. It's like I get to do all the acting, but it doesn't have to be me. But over the course of being at Blizzard, I was asked to do a lot of sort of spokesperson-y things, whereas like talking to the media and talking on stage. And I do a lot of public speaking at GDC. And I think the act of sharing about the work I've done versus like putting on a performance was so much more compelling and exciting to me that I found comfort in it and really sought to practice that. I still get very nervous. Even now, you put that countdown up and I have to like sit there and like vibe or I'll just start shaking. So I wouldn't say that it's like super natural for me, but I have spent a ton of time practicing doing it. And even though there's like an adrenaline rush to getting on stage, it is something I really enjoy.
That's awesome. Robyne, do you share that? Would you want to
No,
jump
I'm
up
so
and
freaking out by all the names coming up. So, yeah, no, much more the introvert.
when it comes to like acting shots and stuff, I guess, is there any component of like stage fright when it comes to like reference? Like, is that easier to kind of jump out and show? Do you show reference in dailies, or do you kind of block it out first? I guess each of you. Robyne, we'll start with you.
Oh, no. So at the studio, they did this a couple times where they had essentially it was like an Academy Awards that they had a file folder so people could put their video reference in there, and then at the end of the production, we would have like a showcase of the funniest video reference, and it was. You could always tell the introvert people because as soon as they shot video reference, they would keep it on their own personal computer and they would delete it right away. It's just like there's no record of that anywhere. So yeah, I was kind of one of those people. I could get other people to shoot video reference for me and show it, but for me myself, not so much. I mean, a big part of it too is it took me a long time to get comfortable in front of the camera. I felt like, a 3-year-old dancing. Like a 3-year-old, they think they're a rock star and they're up there and they're doing their moves. But in reality, what you're looking at is not exactly, I'm sure, what's going on in their head. I feel like that when I'm shooting video reference, like what's in my head is like amazing. And then I look at the video reference and I think, oh my God, I just sucked the life out of this shot, So I tend to work on getting more and more comfortable in front of the camera. And I've gotten much better about it, but not to the point where I'm showing people. So what I tend to do is I have multiple clips. And then when I'm looking at it, I see certain aspects to certain, versions where I'll say, oh, I really like the head thing I did or the facial expression or something like that. But then the hand action in this or whatever. So I kind of piece together sort of Frankenstein different parts that I like. But if I were to show somebody, you can't just say, okay, but ignore that, but look at that and take that and we'll put it in here. Just imagine this all together, So that's why I tend not to show as well. Primarily though, if I'm being honest, yeah, it's just that I'm shy.
I think it's very fascinating because of like the type of work that we do and the reference, like specifically us. I know there's tons of people who are executing on performances in video games as well, and tons of body mechanic stuff in film. But I've primarily been in the gameplay space where the type of reference I'm taking is pretty rarely like emotionally driven. Like I'm trying to get that character's inner monologue, but there's a lot of it that's like, okay, how exactly am I doing a different series of basic attacks? And just trying to find a different way to like use an axe, a different way to do like a 1, 2, 3 kind of combo and find those rhythms. I am very rarely, if never, like recording my face and trying to find a moment where I feel like that does feel a lot more like you're acting and there's a sense of vulnerability where there's vulnerability to being like, okay, I'm going to take literally a stick and go swinging around outside. But it's less of like, hey, this is me trying to take an emotional take of this character and literally like, what are my legs doing if I'm spinning around? I've been a lot more comfortable sharing my reference, but because it's like, does this pattern make sense? And like, it ends up being much more in a mechanical space of trying to figure things out to the point where often my reference, I'll just use my hand to try and get timing right. Or I'll like hit a table and get the audio clip of something that I'm going to animate beats to so I can feel the rhythm of it, even though the body's doing something totally different. So the types of reference that I would create and therefore share, it's not so much of like, hey, we're hitting a tender moment here as I failed to juggle 10 times in a row. And I have to practice to actually stick it or find a YouTube video.
I don't think I've ever heard the take of, I guess, using reference for gameplay stuff. Like I hadn't thought about all the creative uses of reference that you'll use those more often than the emotional stuff, I guess. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, I've shared some on social media over the years, but like it really, because you're animating things that are so larger than life, and also like really trying to get in that 3D thing that's got to work from all these different spaces. It's definitely still very valuable, and I used it all the time, especially just to like get unstuck and just have a second to like think about it. But it's true, not everybody uses reference. That's for sure.
If just thinking about the kind of the film and games that side of things that each of you brings, is there a thing on each other side of the fence? Like, is there anything that you haven't gotten to try on games, or haven't gotten to try and feature that you like your job, but it's like, oh, that'd be really cool. I wish I could do more of that. There's a tail in my face.
Lana, you go ahead first.
I'm not sure, because I feel like for a while I'd just be like, oh, I wish I had more bones. Like looking over at film and being like, wow, there sure are a lot of controls on that rig. I have one control on my rig. I will never forget like joining Blizzard for the first time and being like, oh, we're in the big leagues now, baby. We're going to see what a real production rig looks like. And then being like, oh yeah, it was 15 bones that Dave made 10 years ago. And you're like, what are we doing? It's in 3D Studio Max. What is happening? It just was quite the shock. But that's probably the biggest thing. But like technically, I think the thing I love about I always say that animation was like my through line to make games. Like my true love is there. And so I feel like I'm very biased, and like there are things that I love about film. But at the end of the day, I'm like, am I a bad animator? Like in that that's not the end of the line. That's not like the final step on what I was seeking on my journey.
That's a good answer. I mean, I would love to do if there were things that I would love to do more, would be I don't know, just like a variety of like evil characters and stuff that's really kind of super creative. And then the thing that's really nice with DreamWorks is the variety of the movies that they make. So you can do trolls, but then you're doing How to Train Your Dragon. So you've got a really wide spectrum of styles, which I really love. Is then you see it, which is crazy because you have a big crew, and there's a group of people that are really, really good at cartoony stuff, and then a group of people that are really good at realistic movement and whatnot, and then technical animators, and then you've got a few people that are kind of good at sort of both, or maybe more generalist. But I can remember one guy, he's like amazing animator, super great with cartoony, and then he was cast on Dragons, and I remember him coming to me and he was almost in tears because he said, I don't know what I'm going to do, and he was completely freaked out, because he said, this isn't my wheelhouse. So it's fun to be able to go and just push yourself and do those things, and especially when you don't know you can do them, and then you try it and suddenly it's like, oh, that's so exciting. Yeah. So I love that. Anything that's new. So
speaking of new, something I've should have mentioned at the beginning, just as a quick thing. Maya's not new to that segue, but I should call out big thank you to Autodesk for first of all for sponsoring this panel. They've helped me kind of arrange some stuff on the back end. Should have said that at the beginning. Luckily, they're very nice to me, and I'm sure they won't mind that we waited until everyone's now hooked, everyone's invested and interested. So now you get to hear me just briefly tell you.
Strategic.
See? Forgot? On purpose, calculated. Honestly, all Autodesk wanted me to share was that if you're a student, you get Maya for free, which most people know. And when you're done with school, or you're not a student, you don't have to pay for commercial Maya, which is the expensive thing that no one wants. You can get Maya Indie, which is what I've had for years. I imagine that's what most of us have who need it. And I think that's like, well, I don't know if it's like 300-ish. It's like the normal 3D software cost. That's not Blender. And, don't pay for Maya commercial. I was given explicit permission to allow you to tell you, don't pay money for Maya commercial unless you're a studio. Most of us aren't studios. Maya Indie, it's cheaper. Maya Education, free for students. Full versions, no restrictions. It's linked below. Cool. Back to animation. Actually, speaking of Maya, I'm actually curious because Robyne at DreamWorks, it's Primo.
Yeah.
And then Lana at Riot, I'm assuming it's Maya.
It is. Yeah.
Okay. So 2 different questions for each of you. I guess Robyne, you've been playing with Maya more recently after not having used it a whole lot for a while.
Yeah.
How was that experience coming back to it? And then Lana, for you, I guess is there any like go-to staples just that you use, like scripts or just stuff you kind of rely on, or are you just super vanilla Maya?
So at Blue Sky we use Maya, and I am, full disclosure, I'm not tech savvy, so safe room, nobody go and advertise that, but I am not tech savvy at all. So learning any 3D program was really tough for me. But once I got into it, which is funny because it's a powerful program, but I happen to be one of those people that animates super simple. So I'm probably using 10% of what it can potentially do. So then going into Primo, I was sort of that same thing. People were saying, oh, it can do all this stuff and whatever. I'm like, just dumb it down, just super simple. So jumping back into Maya, it was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. And I think it's because you get just familiar with what you need to do. So you have the vision of the animation that you want. And then it's just a matter of finding where the tools are, because all the tools, they'll have a different way of doing it. The tool might be called something else and it's put in another menu or whatever, but you know what it is that you are looking for in order to accomplish the task. So it's just a matter of finding that. And then the muscle memory came back pretty quick. So,
Yeah, that's we used 3D Studio Max at Blizzard for a really long time. Eventually transitioned to Maya. I guess there's a point in time in the industry where Maya was the film animation software and 3D Studio Max is the games animation software. And that has since changed. Autodesk, if you're listening, considering that you're sponsoring this panel, put the timeline from 3D Studio Max into Maya, you cowards. Because they're like, I think the thing that you find is at the end of the day, the important thing that I have is my animation skills. The buttons are going to change around. The tools are going to be different. Maybe I'll have a pencil sometimes. Maybe I will have Maya sometimes. Maybe I will be using Control Rig. I'll be directly in Unreal. Let's skip the software, But those animation skills are the things that connect the dots for me. When it comes to the tools, I typically find that I am a very low-tech animator as well. I'm not very scripts. Animator Ricky Wood gave a talk at GDC this last year using animation layers that it will cause you pain if you watch it in a good way, and everybody should watch it, but it will cause you pain. But I saw somebody in the chat, Dorius253, Animbot baby, poo, selection sets, mirroring, the motion trails that don't crash your computer. It is excellent. So I'm a big Animbot advocate myself.
Yes, hands down.
Echoed all around. Which, on a side note, I have like a 40-minute Animate video if anyone's like, I want to get into that, but I don't know what to do with it. It's a long video. It doesn't even scratch the surface. There's so much you can do in that tool set. Not that you need it, but it's nice. Sorry, there's just like a feather duster tail in my face every 30 seconds. The most important question maybe that I'll be asking all evening is, do either of you have pets?
Go ahead, Lana.
I don't. I long for pets. I lived somewhere where I couldn't have pets for a long time, but now I live somewhere I can have pets, but I travel a bunch. And so it's unfortunately pets have not been on the on for me, but I do love them a lot.
I got 3 cats, and yeah. all three of them hate me. I mean, one of them, he's like 22 pounds and he's just full of attitude. Yeah, he's the size of a small dog. And yeah, still, you'd think he'd be all cuddly and squishy, but he's not like yours. I'm jealous.
She's not 22 pounds. She's not pampered that much yet.
She's got to earn it.
My guy, he's like big boned. He's
Well, one thing that that I'm always curious to ask just everybody, like anyone I can ask, like, please tell me about your workflow. And I know that, you know, shot to shot workflows change and it always kind of depends on a number of things, but you know, you're locked in a room, you're made to animate something that you just, wow, no, this is maybe not the hypothetical we want. You've chosen, you know what, I think I'll animate
Run
today.
with it. Run with it.
Too far from the truth, though.
You know, you have you know, a typical shot that, you know, you're happy with, you're doing your thing, things are moving. What's the usual workflow, kind of the go-to look like for each of you? Robyne, we'll start with you.
So years ago, I was asked to do a talk on workflow, and I was like, "Yeah, sure, absolutely, that'd be great." And I kid you not, I'm full disclosure. The night before, I had a complete meltdown because I suddenly realized I didn't have a workflow, and I thought, "What am I supposed to talk about?" And they had 3 other people that were going to be there that, you know, they're professionals. I'm like, I'm not going to look like a professional. I'm not a professional. I'm such a fraud. So I was going through the complete total meltdown and panicking because I'm thinking, at that point I'd been animating for like, I don't know, 15 years. I'm like, how can I not have a workflow? Everybody's got a workflow. Like, why didn't I pick that up? So, but it hit me after about 2 hours of crying and then realizing, actually, that is my workflow, is that I don't really have a workflow. And it's just that there's so many variables that that come into play when I'm sitting down. So it depends. If it's a more technical shot, you know, there's more planning and whatnot. If I'm doing straight ahead, if I'm doing pose to pose, and then it depends on my mood, blood sugar level. It's like I have to procrastinate for a good 2-3 hours before I sit down and actually start working, and then the guilt and the panic set in, and then I just hit the ground running until 10 o'clock at night. You know, and other days I wake up, I'm like, oh yeah, I still got this, you know, and jump right in. So yeah, that's essentially my workflow. That's not what they want to put on like school websites and stuff like that. Or, you know, they don't prop me up and, you know, usually in front of people and say, you know, sound like you know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Healthy dose of panic.
Yeah, exactly.
It should be on every job description.
Yeah.
Just expect it. It's not a requirement, but you should anticipate you might feel that way at some point.
Yeah.
My current workflow is just 8 hours of meetings. But when I'm animating, when I'm trapped in a room and I'm forced to animate, my workflow, I really like to think about. I pretty rarely like jump in and like immediately start posing and messing with things, because I find that I'll just like I can get lost in that, and then I get really focused on details, which we're most often like animating to unblock somebody else from the thing that they are trying to do. And so usually getting a first pass, whatever it may be, available for use in the game as soon as possible is like the best possible workflow. So I'll usually think about it for a while. I do a lot of sketching on just Post-its, like stick figures, just like, oh, here's a rough idea. Sometimes I'll stand up and I'll act it out, but mostly to feel out the footwork or something, and not so much to like actually capture the reference. It just sort of helps me be like, all right, okay, left foot, then right foot, then the swipe, blah, blah, whatever it is. And then I'll sit down and I'll dive in. And I have only recently found out, I would have had basically the exact same answer as Robyne, and that I'm like, I don't know, and then I just do it. But I've recently found other people describing things that I do as a part of my workflow with terms. So I recently found out that my workflow is a hybrid process using copied pairs and layering. And so I'll go through and do sort of a couple big block poses for key poses, but then I go through and get rough timing by literally just copying the same poses over. I don't use a step mode at all because I can't process what's happening in step mode, but I can hold it and then see it spline to something else and move things around that way. And then I go through and do, usually at that point, I'm like, good enough. And I ship it to the game because somebody needs it and it's clean enough. The timing is tight enough. And even if things kind of pop through, it validates whatever gameplay that we're going for. But then I'll go through and I'll do layered. So from there, I'll just take the root and polish out the root. And then I'll go through the spine or the legs or whatever is like driving the motion. I'll sort of go there versus like specifically the feet or specifically the whatever. Wherever the driving motion is, I'll go to that part of the animation and sort of focus there. And then I just I just kind of do it. That's the part where it's like, and then I go until it's done. I participated in this thing with Riot called the Super Art Power Hour, where you can see me sweat it out over the course of an hour of me being like, I did some poses, and now you can see it still looks bad. And then I just go until it looks less bad. Is that helpful? Make it be bad and then not bad. That's my workflow.
It's that easy. And I would recommend everybody who's like, I want to see this stuff in action. You should search that. Riot Power Hour is what you would search, right?
The Super Art Power Hour, the character animation hour or something.
Some combination of keywords in that ballpark, you'll find it. That's how I think that's how I discovered the Twitch streams you do, the Rat Animators Twitch stream. I discovered that on YouTube. I was like, this is awesome. And then I saw it was connected to more of the stuff you were doing.
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't realize that. I should have said that as part of my intro. The Riot animation team, the RAT, we do some Twitch streams. It's been a minute since we've done one, but we do demo reviews and stuff over on Twitch sometimes. It's a good time.
Excellent. Speaking of reviews, they've got some people in chat who are who are part of that group. Nice. Speaking of reviews, we actually have a fun little thing we were going to try here live. Is we're going to judge people.
Oh yeah,
that's how I've been internalizing it as well.
We had a form go out. If you're like, wait, what form? You got to follow me on Instagram and TikTok and all the places. Come on now. But we put out a form to collect some submissions, and we had a whole bunch of submissions. Definitely more than we'll be able to get to. But for a little bit, we wanted to just kind of go through some of the shots, maybe some demo reels. We'll go for a little bit of time, see how it goes, and bear with us for any potential technical difficulties. But I think we got this. So give me a second to reconnect to Sync Sketch. I'm going to share my screen, and we're gonna take turns picking random numbers and jumping into some of these reviews.
I'm seeing the names pop up in chat saying, please do mine. And I'm trying to find their names to see if I have them in this stack.
And also just a heads up, if you're watching the screen, you're like, wait, mine's on the list. There were like 70 in the folder. So I had to break them into chunks, and they're in these kind of blocks. And so we might jump into a block. You might not see your name. You might be in a different block. It's all kind of just scrambled. So don't stress. We'll see what happens. We'll make it work. All right.
and thank you guys, by the way, for all those people that posted stuff. I totally feel for you, because that is nerve-wracking, so I just want to call out and say that it's really brave to do that, to put your work forward. And I'm sure a bunch of you guys, it's probably like getting called up on The Price is Right. It's like, oh,
I'm going to jump into individual shots.
Okay.
There we go.
All right.
All right.
Are we synced? Can you see me scrubbing? Yeah, baby.
Thanks.
All right. Do we set it up at all? We just play it and get going.
I say go for it. The audience in the theaters, the audience playing the game, they don't get a tutorial. Well, they might get a tutorial in a game, but you know what I mean.
I love that. I felt like that was spicy commentary. All right. Alexandria Rowland, your tiger mechanics, if you're listening. See, this is a tough one to start with. I'm like, it looks pretty good. Probably, I mean, here's like a very annoying first note, but this is how I think your animation is sitting in a pretty good spot, is like the texture buzz on the face. Why it is happening? Oh my Lord. Why that happening? Right? I just feel like presentationally, I don't know what, there's like some pixel buzz going on. Super obnoxious first note, not about animation, but it is unnecessarily distracting. So something to consider.
That'll be your camera near clip plane. That's what you search. If you're like, well, how do I fix that? Gotcha.
Yeah, this is actually the troubleshooting stream now. Probably the only thing that's really striking me like right off the bat, and Robyne, this is where you're going to see I have a chronic issue of like I will just start talking. So bear with me. I will shut up. Is the moment that sticks to me the most is this secondary jump, in that I like that you didn't do sort of the same kind of jump. Obviously, it's a different sort of lateral versus actually going up, and it's sort of like a calm, weighty, like lift up from this. It feels super fun from reference, but then it seems like you're doing some funky stuff just to avoid clipping the tail into the ground. And I feel like I feel it through here, where there's like some weirdness of like not quite smooth arcs. You have this weird tangent here where the tail briefly looks like a little sausage, like a delicious summer sausage that I'd have on a charcuterie board. That I feel like you could just sort of avoid some of those things from this angle. And then it goes into sort of like this nice flow. You have the nice sort of flick down of the tail through here. But as it comes up, we get a couple weird sort of wiggly frames with the tail. And I start feeling like really rigid as it gets closer to the back of it. It doesn't quite feel like a cat like tail flick. There's like a lot of motion and pretty broad motion through this like big waggly end that I feel like even if the reference was doing that, you could do something that was more concise, more interesting, and a little bit more fluid, especially because it's sort of like the capstone of this piece. It's like the part that really sticks to me is that really waggly tail beat into a really stiff tail beat.
Sweet. I don't know if do we each want to take turns individually doing it? Do we want to kind of hit them as a group? How do we?
I will let Lana handle the animal creature stuff, because that's definitely her forte. I'm not so much that at all.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts or Wade that you want to pop in on?
I really like the exaggerated, like, what do you call them? Clavicles? Is it still a clavicle for, I don't know, the shoulder blades?
Scapula.
I like the scapula. Thank you. I think that's super fun. I like the asymmetry on them. They kind of pop at different, right there and right there. They kind of come up at slightly different frames, like a frame or two offset. That's nice. I was also going to point at the head flickering, but
Sorry.
That's an easy one.
It's got a nice weight to it too.
Mm-hmm.
It does. I didn't have any. I'm also not amazing at creatures, so I was, didn't have a ton on this one myself, to be honest.
We don't have to go through. I mean, it's a great exercise. I think just presentationally, there's somewhere to go. And then like the last thing for me, and this is sort of an annoying animation thing where I'm like, I could tell that your animation was running out of, plot, for lack of a better word. By the end of it, like there's not really like a final beat. The tiger just kind of like stops and it kind of slows down, and it feels like you're very cognizant of you're about to hit the end of this thing. And so I think just like letting your piece have an end beat will feel more tied together versus just kind of like, and then I was done moving the paws. Like it feels like you've done a really great job referencing something here, but if you could splice something in, sitting down, lying down, or just exiting, screen left here, it'll tie it together, or just cutting it earlier. There's just, a cut earlier might feel weird too, but having some sense of finality that doesn't, right now it feels a little bit like fading out of a song where you're like, I guess the song's, it's over now. Okay. But I'm being super, super nitpicky here. Like overall, I think the piece is super strong and you should be super proud of your work.
Yay. Claps, snaps. I used to have a soundboard with applause and I'm regretting unplugging it.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to another one. Robin, your turn to pick one. Or you can say a number. Either way.
Alrighty. Hold on. I've got to reconnect. Hopefully this will reconnect me. Let's take a look at so I've got one. How about this one here? It's got some awesome video reference in this as well. Yeah. So you guys can see this one okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
You think I don't want to change? Why the hell do you?
Sorry, there's a lot of audio duplicating there. Sorry. So Wade, should I mute mine?
We will not be able to hear yours. You can do whatever you like. We are all good over here.
Okay. So
You think I'm here?
I don't know. Why are you here?
It's not that simple.
It is that simple.
I can't.
Why are you here?
Because I'm afraid.
I love this interaction between the two, and you've got some really, really dynamic
What are you afraid of, Michael?
poses and expressions.
You think I don't want to change? Why the hell do you think I'm here?
There we go. Some stuff that you can look for is like in your video reference, there's a really sharp contrast between those really tight dynamic actions that you've got. Like right here, let's pull up one here. I'm just going to mute mine on this side so I can see what I'm doing here. So watch your head over here on this. Oops. I've got to do start presenting, right? And let's see, pencil. There we go. So on your head over here, you can see your head where you do this like really tight little snappy little moves like that. And there's those contrasts between those sort of keep alives, but not really keep alives because there's so much energy in this shot. But even when you're settling up, always watch out for those areas where your spacing can get very even. So if it becomes even, it won't feel as weighted and we kind of lose that appeal. But your video reference has got all that in there. So you want to find those little accents. So it's happening here on this as well. So you'll watch this, watch your head. You do like this really tight kind of head shake thing and it's awesome. There's so much energy in there. See like that, like that. It's really great to extrapolate those kinds of things from your video reference. So even though we're dealing with characters that don't look anything like us, you know, proportions are different and all that sort of thing, find those things that really capture the essence of the attitude or the action that you're, you know, that you're responding to, and then make sure that that's in your animation. So, you know, with your character here, he's getting really angry and intense. It's like those little snappy things. And what makes them really stand out is they're surrounded by areas where it's not exactly quiet because, you know, he's angry and he's acting all this stuff out, but his action itself goes into more like these tight ease-ins to a really strong expression. But then you'll have these like little reaction things, like these head shakes that are awesome. So if you can get those in there, I think it would be really, really nice. So yeah, even when you've got this head coming back here, so watching your video reference, so you're leaning forward, you spend a lot of time where you're leaning like this. It's a little harder because you got this big camera move, right? But when you hit those poses, it gives you a chance to read and then register exactly what's happening with the face. The trouble with camera moves and big body movements is whenever something's taking place in the camera view, I remember there was some percentage, but if anything is moving more than, you know, whatever it is that you want to see, like even by 30% or whatever it is, you're going to be drawing attention to it. So for example, if you need an expression where it's just, you know, you see this, or you need to register an eye dart, but there's some guy in the background that's doing like this jazz handsy things, your eye's going to go right to that guy. So you're going to miss this. So in these big camera moves, if you can get that, delay the camera move if you need to really register an expression or have it connected to that camera move. So if he's, you know, lurching in, have him lurch in and have that overlap with the camera move so we don't lose it during the camera move. I think it would be really, really nice. And they've got, let's see. Yeah, you've got this really nice jolt forward. And then let's see, there's, so watch what's happening in your video reference right in here. So say your head pulls back and you kind of pause back here, and then you do this accent like that. So your head sort of lurches forward. So there's a contrast between where you hang out, pulling back here, and then you can accent that word. But if our animation kind of floats through that and then comes forward, then we're going to lose that impact. So those are some areas that you can look at to really emphasize that. But yeah, this is a great start. Really, really nice blocking pass on this. So that's what I got for you there.
I really like this too. I love seeing how you've interpreted the reference as well. I think something that I think you're doing such a great job, like with the facial acting in your reference. One thing that I think that you as an actor are doing even better than is currently in your animation is this really big buildup and explosion.
Yeah, I love the acting.
It's that simple.
I can't.
Why are you here?
Because I'm afraid.
This, like, because I'm afraid. I actually really like the expression that you were showing in your reference. This kind of like the fear that's in the character. Like they're screaming, they're angry sounding, like the dialogue sounds upset, but we're seeing vulnerability. And I really like that about what's over here on the right. And I feel like it's more nuanced than currently this pose over here. Unless you have a mentor that's like guiding you in this direction and this is what you're going for, then cool. But personally, I really like that kind of break in the mask of the character, that we're getting this like this anger and this amped up and the character is frustrated, and then we have the change. So personally, I really like that over here. I'd love to see more of that in your animation.
Mm-hmm.
You do kind of show it here, but to have it show up in this break specifically.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is like a little bit less successful of a denouement to have it as a separate beat. And I'd be curious about the motivation to bring it there, as though he's like admitting defeat for himself. But like, even the fact that he hits this like wide-eyed, he hits that fear, but then he quickly sort of moves out of it into like, as though he's disappointed in himself. I think letting him live there and like almost live with like the fear of realizing he's afraid and then sort of staying in that animal space and we have sort of similar beats of disappointment from both characters sort of cascading through each other. And I think it almost takes away from this character's moment of like despondency when you have him look down and then the other guy also look down in a way. It just kind of feels mirrored, but not in a way that like is resonating off of each other to me.
Something that I find in a lot of acting shots too, people tend to move quickly through thought processes, like far faster than we actually process things. And the other thing that tends to happen is, like I was mentioning, like moving through poses. So you spend more time on the in-betweens than you do living around the poses that you've created. So when you create these like amazing poses with all the expressions and stuff, you really want to give them a chance to breathe, but it also allows the viewer to relate to the character's thought process or emotion in that moment. So for example, if you have like a really, really strong angry pose and then you're going to something where he's really sad, if you blend too soon and spend more time on the in-betweens, then you're sort of floating between one and the other. So we'd never get to actually connect to one emotion or the other. But if you, something that I was told like years ago as a tip, which is awesome, even though you've got this amazing video reference, if you're finding those areas where you want to add a little bit more flair to it and push it a little bit further, is just always make sure that you go into the head of the character. So become the character. But I don't mean that in an artsy, fluffy kind of way. What I mean is actually put yourself in the emotion of the character and then think through whatever it is that they're going through. So what somebody told me as advice, what they would do when they had to pantomime something, is they actually act out the subcontext, the dialogue in their head or out loud or whatever, but not reading it like you're reading off a script. Because if you read off a script, everything's very even and you just kind of blah, 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 period, blah, 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 blah. And then it just gets watered down. But instead have all the inflections and the attitude to it, and that will give you an idea of exactly how long you should be spending around those poses, because it took you physically that long to go through that thought process. So I often tell students, where I'll say, if you've got a character and say they come home from work and they're super happy and they will walk in the door and they answer the phone and they find out that they got fired or something. So if you had to just pantomime this, they'll walk in like this, pick up the phone, and then they just go into this, change of expression or attitude. But in reality, if you walked in and you said, man, that was an awesome day, like everything was just going my way, for as long as it took me to say that and act it out is how long it's going to take to actually sell that idea. And then going up to the phone and then thinking, okay, the boss is saying, oh, actually, you know what, you're fired. And me as a character has to go like, this is an awesome, wait, what? What? Are you kidding? And then for as long as it took me to hit those beats, that's how much time I would need to actually sell that idea and sell that thought process, because I physically went through it. If you rush through it too much, then you won't be able to connect to the character. So you've got all the video reference in there, which is awesome, and all those thought processes. But if you want to push it further and you want to, even deviate from certain things or add things that maybe you didn't have in your video reference that you want to, just make sure you're always connecting to the character and never just putting in poses or movement for the sake of moving. Always, and this is just a general note, this is not for the shot in particular, but as a general note, I always tell students that there's a difference between movement and animation. So always think with the purpose of what it is that you're trying to sell and connect with that character. So there you go. My long-winded.
Well said.
I hope
Here,
people are taking
here.
notes. Everyone's frantically scribbling. Wait, what was that?
Yeah, from the woman who has no workflow.
All right, let's find a bipedal body mechanic shot. Let's mix it up a bit. I'm gonna jump over to. Ooh, yeah, that's a cool one. Perfect.
Ooh. Ow.
And I feel like this one might fall in your wheelhouse. What do you think?
Oh, I was about to just start talking anyway because I don't have self-restraint. I'd be super happy to talk about this. So, caveat being, if you are looking for like a super hyper realistic, like this is the weight of a human person doing this, I think it feels good. But because you're using Link, who is a stylized model, I'm going to default to more stylized notes for this thing. So, that being said, the whole thing feels very drawn from reference, aka a little bit slow, I think, in that you're really moving. There's like constant, consistent motion in a way that I think overall feels really good. But I think especially by the time we get to this final, it feels almost more performative than it does like a serious or sharp exercise. He seems less lethal with this sword than I would expect the hero Link to be with this sword. So the things I think about here are, I always talk about it from the perspective of sort of getting to a pose sooner and then living in it longer, which I think is sort of the body mechanics version of what Robyne was just saying with regard to like the emotions. So when I think of this initial jump back into this sort of anticipation pose before this lunge forward, Link is kind of constantly moving backwards, and then before, like, there's maybe 2 frames before he starts lunging forwards again already. And so the motion there, like, I don't want to take it too far away because this is so polished already. I'm not going to give you notes that's like, rework it, baby. But I do think that there is room to make it a little bit more resonant with the character. And I think you could do that by speeding up the amount of time or getting to this pose faster and letting there be more tension and more of a hold that gives you more focal point on where this sort of damage and where this stab is going to come from, and let us have our eyes be drawn more to this blade. Whereas right now I'm overall, and because of the hand and because of the shadow, I'm actually even like losing track of what the actual focal point is going to be going into this next action. So taking out a couple frames between this initial move and this holding pose here, and then letting that live like a little bit of cartoony tension on that leg, continuing that springiness. You're basically just exaggerating the weight shift that you have going from the hips into that back foot, and maybe even adding a beat of tension to get the viewer's eyes being like, this sword is about to do a cool thing. I think I might reconsider your lighting choices to actually get rid of that shadow to make, because you go from, well, the sword is always like that. I think you could even start with the sword like a little bit flatter so you get less of it, which will make this pose less pretty, but it'll make flashing the side of that blade as you come into this stab even more impactful, to be like, this is what you're looking at here. Spend a little time here. Maybe you have a little bit of a tension beat in that you add, similar to what Robyne said, I think of it as like a high frequency moment, which will like draw your eye to it. A little shudder that implies like he's flexing his muscles so hard, and that's why he can spend a little extra time here before jabbing out again. So a little bit more time here. As he comes through, this shape stays super rigid the whole way back. I think you have room to keep the arm to get there a little less fast on this arm, because that's where you'll keep your follow through and then get sticking into that space. And then as you come forward, I think again, you can have him lunge forward quite a bit further. So planting this foot like here, so you're going a further distance. And I think you can take a couple frames out of there as well. So you're speeding it up. And that'll just add a bit of sharpness there, and getting one really clear in between pose as well. Like this being the final sort of pose we hit before we're going into this lunge is sort of an uncompelling breakdown, in the sense that, like, if he's really even doing this exercise that he's going through, he's trying to give like his full force to like show off, I would expect a pose like this. I always say, let's see if my drawers are going to work today, because sometimes they're not. But I would expect it to be a little bit more rotated out, having those hips really leaning, lunging even further forward with that foot. And, forgive me, my drawings are not going to be perfect in the sense that they're not going to necessarily be the same size as his body. But like letting this lunge be really long, his foot will be further up, and you can keep his head sort of focused in this direction, keeping his arm up. But I would expect this arm to actually still be way back here, baby. And the sword is preparing. His body is twisted open so that as he's lunging forward, you're getting the absolute fullest force pose. And then as quickly as you can get to this, which also feels like a little bit weak right now, he's got the bent wrist. This is not quite stabbing directly forward. I think these poses could be much closer together, so it'll feel so sharp to get from this exaggerated pose all the way to that perfect stab, perfectly steered on. It'll just feel, people will start hearing, yeah. They'll start hearing Link's voice in their head as they're playing this. So, and I don't want to spend a ton of time doing a whole bunch of drawovers, but your poses and like the foundation and the balance of what you have here and your camera work are so solid that I think across the board is finding those key moments. And basically, if right now they look kind of like this, where they definitely slow, but then they kind of speed up again, but getting it a little bit more, like this. So you're getting there a little sooner, maybe spending a bit more time there, but you have these big gaps of time or distance where you're moving a little bit quicker. It doesn't have to be one frame like that, but a bit quicker between those key poses, and just add a little bit more sharpness and precision to this. It'll make it feel more lethal and more Linkish to me. Long rant. Overall, amazing work. I have a bad habit of just diving into notes, but I mean, really beautiful, beautiful work here.
I loved it too. I thought, yeah, it was super dynamic and appealing, like the action and everything else. I was just wondering, here at the end where the head's pointed down, like to me, if you're going to attack or whatever, even if it's kind of dynamic, but your head is at least slightly, you're able to look up rather than holding the head in the down position where it looks like she's looking down at the ground. Just wondering if it's one of those that would be more, as far as acting, could go down like this, but then feels like it's actually she's looking ahead.
Yes, I think, and I do, a lot of rigs, especially for video games, don't have eye controls. I know this one has great face controls. So I think that is like a great note of not taking the eyes off the prize, baby. And even like a point here for appeal, I think there's room to kick Link's face out a little bit more so you could see the side, and then it feels less mysterious, but more on target.
I'm going to throw something kind of actually similar. Lana already kind of mentioned this a little bit, but as like a just general style thing for anybody who's like, wow, this is really cool. I want to do a shot like this now. This is awesome feedback. I'm inspired. The stylization is kind of an important part when you're thinking of like, I'm going to do this kind of a like dynamic sword something. If you want to try something cartoony, having a more cartoony or stylized rig will help sell that. You'll likely have better controls for those choices in those types of rigs.
Mhm.
Like the Spider-Verse rig actually has like extra arm controls hidden in there for you to do smears and dupes and fun stuff like that. Or if you're looking for a more kind of motion capture or like visual effects feeling shot with just more kind of ambient motion, more dirt in the curves, as it's sometimes called, that's going to feel more natural with a more realistic looking character. And so consider the style you want to animate in with the rig you want to try using, and do some variety. Try different things with different kinds of rigs to challenge yourself. So you can do the same type of sword animation with similar moves in totally different styles, different timings, different rigs, different problems to solve. Just throwing that out there.
That's actually a really good point too, as far as production as well. Like whenever at the start of any film, and they've done all their character design and modeling and everything else, and they'll release it to the animation department, to do tests. So we do pre-production tests. So we'll do walks and runs, and some acting clips and stuff like that, where you get to contribute to the style of the character. And it's always informed by the model. And of course the backstory of the character and things like that. But that's what's really going to connect that character too, is something that's not a generic action that's just applied to, every different type of character, but instead is more personalized to, their appearance and their style. So
100%. Imagine a rainbow when we say specificity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's switch gears. Let's try we had a couple of demo reels submitted. We'll probably keep it a little bit rapid fire because we won't give feedback on like every shot, but let's give some like overall demo reel feedback, because I know people have lots of demo reel job related questions.
Like of
Which
the
actually
overall
means-
composition.
Yeah, well, also we could mention like, oh, this is a super strong shot for these reasons. Like this one maybe could come off because that part's super, like you could rework that or maybe take it off. Like that kind of high level overview feedback.
Beauty.
Let me remove this because I got to switch to the other tab. Let's see. I'm going to click this one for us to start with, and then let me share the screen. Oh, wrong button. Present, share screen, Chrome tab. There it is. Share audio. Hey, I got this figured out. All right. I think this is a games focused reel, but I think this reel is, will take film or game jobs, but I think it was designed as more of a games reel, but we'll jump right in.
I recognize the typeface as Bungie typeface, so we'll see. Anyways.
Hello. Let's get started.
Oh, I'm actually going to mute it because I don't know what the copyright situation is with this music, and I don't want YouTube trying to mute this video. So if I see a dialogue shot, I'll turn it back on. Awesome.
Cute.
All right. High level demo reel feedback. What you got?
Lana, you go first, because it's more game centric.
Okay, great. So more game centric. I love that you do have like a ton of, like, I would say clearly game centric stuff in here, and that you have like a lot of body mechanic stuff, which is there are absolutely tons of cinematic performance animation positions available in games, but I think it's very clear that you want to do like gameplay, especially with even your giant title gameplay workshop down here, and then showing these things in engine. Always a bonus. I think that generally speaking, for like showing off the animation, it took me a while to like sort of place myself of like what was happening between these two shots, because there's like sort of post processing on it that I think is just like the rendering choice from the engine. But this sort of treatment combined with this, I thought it was like intending on being, my brain was like, oh, are you making this look like it's on the news? There's something about it that stuck to me that it took me a while to place, like, oh, you're showing this off an engine. So I think your title, your sort of lower third here is distracting from the actual content. And this pairing of content in particular, maybe it's just because I'm sitting so close to my monitor, was actually a little bit nauseating camera work wise, with like tons of motion blur. And that's the other thing that I'll sort of get at is you got a lot of animation here, but the combination of like the rendering and like the very full backgrounds is not doing you a ton of favors. And I think it's often distracting from the actual animation. So I think you have a lot of like solid body mechanic stuff. In particular, though, this is the shot that I'm like, gorgeous, because it is so crystal clear. I'm not distracted by anything. I've got two characters doing a cool body mechanic interaction thing that feels pretty good. It's like absolutely the standout piece on your reel for me. Whereas everything else is like very brightly colored. And I think that for an animation reel, there's some work to do to sort of like cultivate that experience. But overall, like compositionally, I think that you have a good variety of work, from like a dialogue piece to like a lot of physical stuff. I think there's definitely notes I have sort of across the board of like the different, for the different animations. But I like that it seems like you're actually saying something different with every piece, and there's like a purpose to having it in the reel, where a lot of times I see games reels that are like just walk cycles, or like just one guy doing one stab 10 times. And so I think the overall variety is definitely on the right track, showing stuff in engine on the right track. There's a lot of really great things about your reel here, but I will stop there for now.
Yeah, I thought it was great. Like, you've got tons of energy, and yeah, like the variety, and then little details like that, which is always awesome to see. Some things that you can do as well with animation is think about animation too, like music. If you have something that has consistent beats and you spend the same amount of time on those beats, it can be very rhythmic and kind of lose that appeal. So, for example, like this guy here with the lasso, if you think about, hitting pose, then pose, then pose, then pose, if it's following like quite a rhythm like that, we can really amp up that dynamicness of making maybe a few poses a little bit shorter and then spending a little bit more time on other poses. So you get a little more variety, some more texture to the shot. And the other thing you can do is look for those, whichever poses are going to be your biggest, strongest ones, and have those the most kind of extreme, and then sort of surround them with poses that are still strong, but maybe not as big, like look at me actiony kind of poses. So say he's grabbing something, but then he yanks it back. So that's a much bigger pose. And it's in contrast to having, a tighter action before it. And that way it's not like big move, big move, big move, big move. Instead, you've got like a couple little ones and then a big move. So they'll stand out a little bit more and have that kind of energy to it. Something I often see with new animators is that they have everything start and stop at the same time. So always watch out for that too. So there's times when we do it organically as well, our brain will process things faster than our bodies will sometimes, and sometimes it's the opposite. Whether or not you have your face react to something where you do this and then you jump back, as opposed to having face and body react at the same time. The brain's got to gets the information first, and then it's like like this, or sometimes it's like your body does that and then your head reacts. So you can delay those kinds of things. So those are my thoughts.
Awesome. I'm gonna let your guys' notes be the notes, and we'll do maybe one more demo reel one. 'Cause I don't know how much time we have. Let's do. You can just pick this one.
Are you clicking on the same ones at the exact same time as me, or am I moving you around?
You're driving.
Oh, I'm driving. Oh, sorry. I'm just clicking around. Robyne, you have a preference?
Nope. Spin the wheel.
Oh my gosh.
Let's do this one. This one looks colorful and fun.
All right.
Oh, one person's like, wait, that was me with the capybaras.
Oh. Short and sweet, baby.
Yeah, it's a beautiful reel.
Yeah, I agree. I think compositionally, it's like it's lovely, like colorful, like super, super clean, those super clear backgrounds. Like nothing is hiding the animation whatsoever, which I love. In particular, there's something that I will always stick on, which is unless you're showing me like a production shot, like from the movie that you were on, I don't want to see motion blur. I don't want to see it, especially for video game. It just players turn off the motion blur instantaneously. That's just a personal preference, but I don't want to see it. And so I just feel like this is like, it's like no nonsense in like the exact favorite way that I have for looking at a demo reel.
Sweet.
I had a suggestion just for it because this is gorgeous, but you know, on the gorilla one where he's swinging the weight around, right in there, I think it'd be a great opportunity to take those times if you really, really want to sell the weight, you know, where you kind of dip down like that, you build up that energy and then whip it really fast. So it's just, you know, offsetting that timing just a little bit more, like have those areas where you kind of like right before he does those swing downs, to have a little bit of a slow down there and then a faster when he's bringing it up. So you get a little bit more of a contrast. So it's not a constant weight going around like this, but instead you go down like that. You get a little bit faster on those upswings. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel what you're talking about. So like here we'd expect it to be like slow down, but as you come around the top of this arc, we'd expect it to be a lot faster. It just gives a rhythm to it.
Energy. Yeah.
Yeah. And gravity is like, it feels, even if like, again, drawing from reference, it feels pretty even because of the centrifugal force, like leaning into gravity feels resonant, even if it's not exactly as it would be. Yeah, I very much agree.
Which is one of the things that's awesome about animation, though, even though you've got this, you know, video reference that was shot from real world stuff and everything else, that we have the ability to go in there and actually tweak, bend, and even potentially break some of the, you know, realistic rules to amp up the appeal and the feeling of something and the dynamicness and the energy of something. So don't be afraid of, you know, tweaking those little things. Those tiny little changes really add up and can add to making something feel super energetic, powerful, you know, dynamic or appealing.
Yeah, agreed.
Also, quick note for everybody in the chat who's like, where's my shot? Just remember, we had to kind of chunk it into different blocks. So like you might not see yours on this list. There's a whole bunch of different lists and we're kind of like randomly rolling dice because there were so many entries. So we only have so much time, unfortunately, but don't feel like if yours wasn't here that like means anything. It just, it's not in another list. Yeah.
There is a question that I'm actually curious about from Monkey 930 that now I'm asking to you, Robyne. For games reels, I typically refrain from adding motion blur on shots, but would you refrain from adding motion blur on a cinematic shot or acting shot as well?
Oh, good question. I don't think it's a problem, except the only area I would caution people is whenever people add on a bunch of flourish stuff. If you're going for an animation reel, you're there to demonstrate your animation. So if you throw in a whole bunch of fancy lights, big camera moves, effects, stuff like that, lots of really loud music or something, it's very distracting. And so if you have a shot and you're playing around with motion blur and it's an excessive amount of motion blur, yeah, it's not helping your animation. And in fact, a lot of times it can be a red flag or feel like a red flag that somebody's trying to detract from the fact that maybe the animation isn't as solid. So, you know, I've seen people throw in these crazy camera moves and, you know, they get really excited about it. And God bless you for getting really excited about stuff like that. But just make sure that you're not taking away from showcasing what it is that you're applying for. So if it is for animation, make it as clear as possible. So just like Lana was saying, with those shots of having no distraction, you can just see your animation and just let it, shine. And then you're not, worried about hiding behind those kinds of things or having somebody being like, oh, I wish that was off so I could see this beautiful animation.
Yeah. Just like scrubbing through this more, something that it's probably just my personal pet peeve is killing me is how many times the thing cuts directly over her one eyeball or like just this section of her face through this piece. Like, just move it a little bit away. Just a little.
Is it making you flinch?
It's like the flatness of like the rendering of it is like so toony that there's a little bit of a depth perception thing where I'm like, it's getting me.
I don't know if I've ever heard on the motion blur thing. I don't know if I've ever heard anyone advocate for motion blur and be like, no, we need it for something. Like it's almost always take it off or like stylize it or something.
Let me say this, like this final shot, I don't know if there's motion blur here. Maybe it's just the camera. It's just like there's some like, there's not motion blur. It's just the camera FOV at the beginning there. This is such a satisfying final shot to a reel. I love that shot. It's so physical. And so the focal point of like her colorful outfit in the gray world doing something cool. That's not like, it's just such a physical, beautiful beat. And she's escaping with such a finality and the editing to it. Whoo, what a juicy end. Like I actually pulling this up as soon as Sir Wade pulled it up, I was like, I actually remember watching this reel on Twitter the other day because of that shot. Not Twitter. What is it called? Blue Sky. Delicious. Tasty. Memorable.
We love Blue Sky here.
We love we're a Blue Sky kind of gal, let me tell you. Yeah.
Memorable. That's what we want a reel to be.
Yeah, well done.
All right. Now we've got about 10 minutes left. And while we had a ton of other shots to look at and like are submitted, which thank you everybody. And so sorry if you were like, I wanted to see my thing reviewed. I have it in a folder. It still exists. Like who knows what could happen in the future, but for the moment, we've got 10 more minutes. And so I wanted to transition us to some Q&A. And you've heard a lot of stuff. You've heard a lot of advice. Now's your chance. If you have questions, it's time to ask. We can all see the chat. While we have people jump on questions. Oh, and also please don't spam any questions. If you ask your question like a dozen times, we're not going to answer it. So ask it. And if it like gets lost and it's like, oh, maybe they just didn't see it, you can re-say it. That's cool. But don't spam it, please. Thanks.
So
we'll start with this one.
We're gonna have you pull them, and so we're not talking to each other, Sir Wade. I can see them.
Unless you see one that's like, oh wait, I want to answer this one.
Oh, okay.
Actually, I am curious kind of on this one. On the motion capture side, I feel like I have an idea of what Robyne's answer is going to be. And I only have a guess for Lana's answer, but I'm going to let you both go for it. How often do you work with motion capture?
Not at all. Okay, Lana.
Also, not at all. Next question. I feel like it is something that I want to be clear. It's not something that motion capture. It has like an amazing purpose. It's like another tool in the tool belt, especially for video games. It's like, do you really want to? We have to make 50,000 animations. Like, where we want to spend our points? Do we want to spend it polishing every transition? Maybe not. Like it's not the foot placements. It's not the passion I went to school for, motion capture builds beautiful games, and the way that people use motion capture, there's so many fantastic talks about it now. People being like, we used a really limited set and we used it to do really quick blocking passes for creatures. My favorite talk to this day is still by Simon Unger, saying like AAA quality at an indie scale. It's a GDC talk that's now free on YouTube. It's 30 minutes. It is it's great. There are so many great ways of using motion capture. I feel like it is sadly a blind spot because I feel like I am less hireable if I ever needed to come down to that, because I've never used it. So I'm not in no way advocating against using it. And if you are getting into games, it's very likely that you will. I just have never.
Fair enough. This is kind of a cool question. Do either of you have any advice for someone who's far past graduation and also later in their life how to break into the industry since internships are not an option?
Lana, want to go ahead?
I sure do. I love this question because I think it happens all the time, and not even just to people who are like later in life. Internships are very strategically created so that you often have to be returning to school. So even if you're in your last year of school, the idea is that your school has prepared you well enough that there should be an entry level position for you in the industry. However, we've all seen where the industry is at. There's about 100 bajillion layoffs, and you have people who do have 5, 10, 20 years experience applying for the same jobs that you might be having no experience. And if you're a hiring manager in a position, I'm going to say there's lots of people who will say, well, the right choice is for me to take this person who has experience and put them in this role. So it's a tough world. This is an excellent question. But at the end of the day, I don't want to use this word because it has a negative connotation. But like networking. But what I mean by that specifically is really putting yourself out there. I think the fact that you're here as part of this community and asking this question to us is a great start. But talking with people in person, putting your work out there as frequently as you have new work to get feedback early on it as you can, as often as you can, and importantly, as often as you can, show the progress on that thing. Show that you are actually making improvements and taking feedback to heart, and be really honest with yourself about where you're at. People want to work with people who are driven. It doesn't matter where they are in their life. It doesn't matter like when they started. They want to work with somebody who is driven and committed and excited and capable of accepting feedback. It's like half of what we do is talking to people and being like, oh, you want me to change it? Okay, I'll go change it. That's the job, baby. And so being able to show somebody that in like a casual setting, you don't have to be searching for mentorships. There's so many online communities. Sir Wade obviously has this beautiful one here. We have the Rats. There's also Animate if you're interested in video games. There are so many wonderful communities out there. And just getting involved with them and talking to people. People want to work with people they feel like are going to do a great job on that soft skill interpersonal side and not just the craft skill side. So getting involved, talking to people, you got this.
Yeah, I would also say, a lot of people get fixated, on working at a certain studio or a certain industry or something like that. And right now, I think flexibility and adaptability is going to be imperative. So if you can get work somewhere and you just think of it as experience, and just like Lana said, is networking. So if you have one friend that works at a studio and they have 5 people. I mean, we know how this works and it spreads out. But if one person comes back and says, hey, there's this little studio that's starting up this thing and they're looking for some people to, put through this short little project, that's one more step to not only networking, but then getting familiar with a work pipeline, professional pipeline, and you're learning some new skills, and then you've got some more experience that you could put on your resume and say, hey, now I've got experience working in a pipeline doing this or that or whatever. So you never know where an opportunity might come up. So always look for those and spread your net wide. So
yes, absolutely.
Excellent. I had a question and then I lost it because it scrolled. Oh, actually, here it is. Lindsay was actually one of the first people to submit on the form, so I'm going to ask her question. How do you prevent yourselves from falling into tunnel vision while animating? And I believe some extra context in her submission was to kind of have the holistic view of the shot in mind and not get so bogged down by micro stuff.
Yeah. I love this question because this happens all the time. All I can say is pee breaks, coffee breaks. Every chance you get, because it's very easy to sit down and suddenly you realize 6 hours have gone by and you've been animating, and something that it happens to all of us where you're animating something, and here's an example. So you're going at it and suddenly it's not really working. You're hitting problem after problem and you're getting more frustrated and it's looking awful, and so you're just diving in there and you're moving a bunch of things and you're thinking, okay, it's starting to look good. Like it's coming along. It's looking much better. And then you go for a coffee break, you go for dinner, and you come back and you realize it's not that it's looking good. It's just a lesser version of crappy. And it was only because you were so fixated on it was so bad before, and so it's important to always come back with fresh eyes. So I just don't underestimate the the power, as well as implementing it into your workflow of taking breaks and coming back with fresh eyes. And so when you're looking at it, don't focus on the problems that you were dealing with for the last 2 hours. Instead, look at it as though you're watching a movie for the first time and you're hitting play, and just go with your first initial reaction to it. The other thing that you can do is, if there's specific things that you need to hit, is just put a sticky note up on your computer so that you remind yourself of what it is. Like if it's supposed to be super angry, put words that are going to remind you, so you don't gloss over those and think, oh, you know what, I've got this pose and now I'm polishing it up and it's starting to blend. But say anger is starting to get watered more and more down because you're getting into whatever, and you lose that thread. And then all of a sudden you come back to it and you realize, oh, I just spent 6 hours. It looks great, but I missed the objective of the shot, or, it got watered down to something else. So yeah, that would be my advice.
Yeah.
Excellent advice.
Great advice. I don't have much to add, but if you are around other people, I'm like, just show it to somebody. And like, there's such extreme discomfort, especially if it's early, especially if it's ugly. Even if you're like, I'm not looking for feedback, will you look at this? And then often they'll be like, but what if I did have something to say? And you'll be like, okay. And then you can choose to take that feedback or not, as always. Like if it's whip, it's whip, like do what you're going to do. But like forcing yourself to show your work more often than you're comfortable with, I think is just a good skill to get into.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Good advice.
I think we have time for one final question, and I'm going to take this one and kind of expand on what was typed. We'll take this beyond just like a specific shot or a project, but also for anyone who's like applying for jobs, working on a demo reel, like whatever piece of this journey you're on. How do you push through with motivation or burnout when things need to get done? How do you make it happen?
Oh, Lana, you want to start with this one?
Sure. Everything Robyne just said for her last answer. No, pushing through burnout. I mean, I think at like, if things need to get done, I think very frequently there is sort of a false idea that things needing to get done means that like I'm putting pedal to the metal, period, no matter what, and I'm taking no breaks. I'm crunching my way through it. When often the thing that is the worst thing you could do is tie yourself out more, stare at it until all you see is a hole in the middle of the screen. Like I find that I will do worse work to it. Like I will feel worse doing it. I will be worse to my colleagues. I will create a worse final product, if I don't just have the rest and break that I need to take a breather. And so sometimes the best thing that you could do, like if you're on a deadline, you got to get it done, talking with people, that counts as a break. You can still be productive, and you get outside of yourself, and you're basically leveraging the people that you trust around you to help you through it. Like if you have a deadline, you got to get it done. Sometimes the answer is you just got to do it. And sometimes the answer is accepting that it will be in a worse quality than you wanted it to be in, and not having to be a perfectionist. But if it's burnout, you're not going to solve burnout by working through it, period. Mm-hmm. For me, that's like full stop. So take a day, take an hour, like you need to rest. And it's that resting that will get you excited to get back into it. It's that resting that will physically make you feel more capable. I get like the bad RSI, baby. I gotta take breaks, or my hands will physically cramp up into little dinosaur claws while I'm sleeping. Like, I think that you cannot get through burnout by burning yourself out further. So just,
and so Reid and I just had that discussion too, just yesterday. And advice that I personally, I think has contributed to the longevity of my career is being able to go back and remember why it is that I like what I do. Because no matter what job you do, there's going to be stresses. You're going to have deadlines. There's going to be confidence issues, technical issues, whatever it is that is kind of throwing you off. And what that does is it actually takes brain power away from you being able to animate well and efficiently. And I mean, you can acknowledge it and say it, but it doesn't necessarily help you get through it. But what helped me, and it's a muscle that I've been developing since I went to school. I didn't even realize how important it was going to be. But when I get burned out, the thing is with burnout, you're dead in the water and there's not much you can do about it now. So it's important to always cultivate and spend as much time as you can to develop that muscle of remembering why it is that you love what you do. because once you can reset your brain, because I'll go for a walk and I'll think about what it was like to be a student and how exciting animation was, and I loved creating something and it was my own shot and I got to do whatever I wanted on it and all that sort of thing. Those other things like the deadlines and the technical issues and whatnot, they're still there and they're part of everyday, jobs, but they start to get muted. So now you've got 80% of your brain to sit down, and it's all about perspective. So then you get excited about doing your shot again. So you're going to animate better and faster than you do when you're worried about all those other things. So yeah, that would be my advice.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, thank you both so much for spending the time sharing your sage wisdom.
This was awesome.
Yeah, fantastic. So fun. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank
Anytime.
you.
And thank you to everybody who's here across YouTube, Twitch, and LinkedIn. This stream, this whole thing will live on YouTube. Like if you're like, wait, I missed stuff. What were those communities to join? Like what were the answers to the other questions? Can I see the reviews again? All this is going to live on my YouTube channel to be able to watch it.
Also, like a whole new level of nervous. I didn't even think of that.
It'll be hidden, unlisted. You won't be able to find it. And a big thank you once again to Autodesk for kind of being the driving force behind me putting this together. They helped sponsor this panel, helped me make this possible. And so links to Maya Indie down below. If you're a student, get it for free. If you're not a student, get it for cheaper than commercial studios pay for it with the link in the description. But thank you all so much again, and we'll see you next time. Maybe there's a next time.
Yes. Thank you, guys.
All right.
Yeah, thank you.